Hi, everybody. So today we had our first Zoom call to go over Module 1 of KBB. And when I recorded the Zoom session, it recorded it didn't record the main screen, so it's really hard to see what the details were. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of what I presented today, and mainly how my launch plan is evolving now that I potentially have a sponsor who's going to collaborate with me on these events. Okay, so what we're doing in each one of these Zoom calls is we're each going to take 5 minutes to review what are our main takeaways from the most recent module, in this case, Module 1. What did we do over the past week, and what are our commitments over the next week? So my key takeaways from Module 1, it's basically all Tony Robbins. It's basically the importance of momentum, having focus, which means you're not dabbling. And then in order to be successful, you have to actually be obsessed with what you're trying to do. You have to have that hunger. Otherwise, it's really hard to create this success. Last time we talked about how it's important to fall in love with your ideal client and not fall in love with your own product or service, which means that it's not about me, and it's really about adding value to someone else. Now, what I did this week is I had a Zoom call because of the coronavirus. We didn't meet face-to-face, but one of the largest law firms in China has a representative office here in Irvine, California, which just opened, and they are trying to develop business here in the US of multinational companies or clients who really need to understand the legal and regulatory environment in China. So to make a long story short, they are interested in sponsoring my upcoming launch and my upcoming event. So what I've actually done is I've completed a tentative launch schedule. And my commitment before next week is I need to provide YK Law a proposal for how much it would cost or how much I would charge them to sponsor these events. They're actually going to be part of the event, so they will actually provide a keynote speaker for one session for each webinar. And I also need to write an executive summary or overview of this 4-part webinar series, because until you have an overview or an executive summary of what it is you are trying to create, it's really hard to put in the missing pieces. So once you commit to this is the overall value proposition for the people who are going to attend the webinar, then it's easier to fill in the pieces of what you need to complete because there aren't too many moving parts. Now I'm starting with this slide because my next launch is also going to be sequenced with a complete rebranding of my content. And the podcast is called Know the Game, Win the Game when you're doing business in China. So everything is going to be rebranded around this Know the Game, Win the Game. And you can see in the background, my motto is knowing how to speak Chinese doesn't mean you know what to say in Chinese. So this webinar series and again, I'm talking about with a sponsor. I don't know if I'm going to actually have a sponsor, but assuming that I can land this sponsor, it's going to be Know the Game, Win the Game, Strategic, Cultural, and Legal Guidance for Winning in China. And it's a 4-part webinar series. And the key dates are on April 16th is when I will announce and start promoting this webinar series. So basically, this is when the marketing campaign begins. The other date in here is April 23rd. This is when everybody is supposed to complete the KBB modules because Dean Graciosi is doing kind of like a graduation on April the 23rd. And our last Zoom call happens to be on April the 22nd. So we should all be completed. I just put it in there for reference. The first webinar starts on May the 14th and then one every week until the 4th webinar is completed. So each one of these will be 2-hour webinars. We're really going to focus on stories and lessons. They're going to be, for the 2 hours, I'm going to talk about a strategic topic related to doing business in China, a cultural topic, and then our sponsor or my sponsor is going to talk about a legal topic. So I'm basically giving my sponsor a platform not only just to promote their services and expertise, but also to be a presenter so they can start accruing content that they can use for other promotions. And then 30 minutes of Q&A during the webinar. The immediate content creation tasks are really the event overview. What is the agenda and what are the topics for this webinar series? It's going to be 4 webinars, so we need to have an agenda and topics for each one. Now, during the last webinar, this is when we would do a call to action and have what we upsell. So I may upsell my 1 year of EME coaching and advisory services. I talked about that in the last video. But I think what we want to do is we want to drive people to kind of a survey or a questionnaire where they can actually schedule us for a discovery appointment or a discovery call to see if it's a fit for us to offer them either China advisory services, training services for whatever they're doing in China, or legal services, which is what my sponsor would be offering. So once it's announced, the next thing is obviously all the publication tasks have to be done. So in this case, a MyMint landing page, a Kajabi landing page, and the whole offer stack includes a new course. So it's going to go on to Udemy. So there's just things that have to be published in order for the marketing campaign to actually launch. This also coincides with rebranding. So as all of this is going on, everything is going to be kind of redisseminated with a website update, all of the social media channels, YouTube, Facebook, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. My meetup groups are going to be rebranded. I'm going to write articles in Quora, LinkedIn, Medium. So it's going to be a complete rebranding that coincides with the promotion of this 4-part webinar series. So hopefully a lot of this will help to drive traffic. And then we'll figure out whether we want to do paid traffic or not. The main thing that's really hard about launches is the content strategy, because you have to create so much. And this is what really is time consuming, especially if you're doing your own post-production. So as part of the podcast, I also want to create a co-hosted show. But when we're doing the webinars, obviously all of the webinar replays are instant content that can be posted on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, YouTube. So that's the content strategy. But the things that I need to develop for this launch is I need to develop what I call the Tactical English Blueprint, which is a PDF file, the new course, which is going to be published on Udemy and Kajabi, the sales videos, and taking a little bit from Jeff Walker, pre-launch content to drive kind of like a sales and marketing funnel for people to register for the webinar itself. Everybody really needs to understand that creating content is really the most time-consuming effort. So you really need to schedule in and prioritize your content creation strategy, because that really is where most people, in my opinion, because of my own experience, where we fall short. Because we think the marketing is good, we think our tagline is good, we think our webinar is good, but then the content, creating it, recording the videos, post-production, that publishing to all the different channels in audio format and video format, that just takes time. So that has to be scheduled in. Now, the sponsored value proposition really is, I'm going to create a highly targeted marketing campaign with numerous touch points that will help our target audience overcome objections, which will lead to connecting with prospects and conversions. We're also going to help give the sponsor multiple events for them to also create credibility and social proof, because they are trying to market themselves to non-Chinese companies now who need legal advice in China. So first is awareness, the pre-market campaign, pre-event marketing campaign. But then there's going to be a replay of each event that's disseminated after each event. And every time all of this content goes out, it goes out on video, it goes out on audio, it goes out in a blog that's published to LinkedIn, Medium, and also on my website. So this is all generating awareness. Okay. Then there's going to be all the channels that really help drive SEO. So answering questions on Quora, sending meetup member messages every time a new piece of content comes out, email lists, social media. So there's a lot of channels where my sponsor will receive value because everything's going out with them as a sponsor and with them as a subject matter expert. But I think the main value is the community, because once somebody attends your webinar or your event, if you can get them into a community and in a Facebook group that's actually engaged and valuable, where they can ask questions, then you can maintain the relationship with the people you attracted to the webinar events themselves. And eventually, they're going to need more than just kind of answers that the community or the subject matter experts can answer in a Facebook group. And they're going to want to engage with either my company, EME, or the law firm for more high-level services, basically retaining our services for higher levels of training, consulting, or whatever. So this is the sponsored value proposition. And I'm kind of thinking, how much do I want to charge them for that? I was just thinking that because they have 3 branches in the United States, one in Los Angeles, one in Irvine, one in New York. So they want to reach not just the local area here in Southern California, but they want to reach all of the United States. And that's what you can do with an online event or an online product, which is a webinar. So I was thinking that they would just purchase 100 tickets that they could then give away to some of their prospects and their existing clients. And based on charging $297 to attend this 4-part webinar series, that's a $29,000, $700 value. I would just say a flat $20,000, and you would get 100 spots. So all of your attendees can register with your unique kind of coupon code. And then you get to be a presenter. You get all of the original content. You get disseminated through all these channels, and you get the community for ongoing engagement with people who are prospects. And then, this is some of the things that I'm working on as far as the marketing materials. Right now, it's still a work in progress, but this is some of the things that I've committed to be able to complete by next week. I also wanted to kind of share real quick. I'm not going to really go over this, but I will post the images along with the video, and you can kind of read it yourself. But this is really, really important, especially for the people who aren't in KBB. This is part 1 of what Tony Robbins calls B.E.N.D and WIMP. Okay, B.E.N.D is an acronym. It stands for Beliefs, Evaluates, Needs, and Desires. So basically, you have to ask yourself these questions. What are the beliefs of the people you are trying to influence, and what is most important to them? And then how do they evaluate and make decisions about what things mean, and what will they compare to you? So this is just a series of really important questions that you need to ask yourself when you have your ideal client in mind. And again, you've fallen in love with your ideal client, so you really need to think about, if you want to influence them, this is a great way to figure out how you want to communicate with your avatar, your ideal client. In my case, I have a very specific person for a very specific company in mind here locally, who is heavily interested in developing the China market. They are the world's largest medical device manufacturer. So I'm imagining this person and asking myself these questions. And then when I'm preparing my sales copy, I'm preparing my hook story close, I will be taking all of this into consideration of how do I communicate more effectively with the people that I'm trying to reach. So you imagine somebody that is a single person, and then when you send information out and you're doing targeted marketing or Facebook ads or whatever, then your message should resonate with the people that you're trying to reach. So this is the second half of this kind of questions to ask yourself. Number 5 is really interesting. So you want to understand what are their wounds, because if you understand what their wounds or their pain points are, then you can figure out how to provide leverage and how to heal them. And this creates a connection where they feel you understand what their pain points are. So in my mind, as an example, their pain points are their past failures in China. I did a webinar training for a group of people who are with a kind of multi-level marketing company, one of the largest here in the US, and they are trying to go to China, but they failed in their first attempt. So now they're kind of relaunching. So understanding that they failed in the past, this can help me make a connection, because perhaps I understand why they failed and I can provide solutions for them to avoid those kind of failures in the future. So I'm going to share screenshots or images of these B.E.N.D and WIMP kind of questionnaires. So people who aren't in KBB, you can just kind of look at these questions and really use these as a guide to prepare how you're going to influence your ideal customer.